Okay, hello, it's Garnet here, and I changed my shirt. It's a different day. I'm not quite sure, September 7 or September 8, depending where you are in the globe, 2017. This video is part of a series, the Neurolite Practical Guide for Beginners Step by Step. And this is where I have encouraged you to print out that document, the Neurolite Practical Guide for Beginners. Notice that it's a practical guide, meaning that I'm trying to give you something that you can use directly. It'll guide you in a practical way. There is some amount of theory. These are the videos before. The practical doesn't make sense if you don't have some theory. Right now we're moving into the brain exercise methods. It's page number 7. I've printed it out and stapled it together section by section. Brain exercise. I think you will recall, I hope, that there are 3 basic ways. I say basic because there's a lot of potential in developing your own unique perspectives on how to use the Neurolite. But basically, you can use the Neurolite for increasing a person's neuroplastic capacity. Let's call that the brain vitality, the brain fitness. And that's the brain exercise thing that we're focusing on now. Then you also have the help right now, and that's going to be the next section. We've talked about it in the kind of the intro videos before this. And then after that, the brain shaping. And brain shaping is not really the domain for beginners, but obviously, depending on the experience you have, the education, the motivation, you will go into using the Neurolite as part of a brain shaping process according to your interests, your motivation, and more information from me. Okay, so I made a big deal. I will always probably make a big deal between understanding or appreciating the relationship between capacity and demand. And those might sound like technical terms, but it's simple enough to know, keeping in mind that the brain is the body is the brain is physical, and it follows physical rules. A lot of those are really evident in the body as a whole. So what we're going to be looking at here are some methods, kind of in 2 categories. One is working to increase the capacity or the fitness level of the brain, your brain, someone's brain, as well as then working to maintain it. And in the maintaining, as you'll see in a few videos to come, we call that brain tonics. I call that. Hopefully you use that. I think it's a really good term and relatable. So building exercises and tonic maintaining exercises. You know, the idea of, well, who needs it? How do I know? There are videos in this Neurolite Garnet YouTube channel that break down how to make assessments step by step by step by step. So I'm not going to dwell on that right now, but I'll give you 2 super simple perspectives on it. 3, maybe, who knows, maybe 4. We all have an innate capacity to kind of read people, consciously or unconsciously. Technically it's called neuroception. Most of it happens as part of a deep survival mechanism that beings have, certainly mammals like us, primates for sure, where you encounter a person and right away there's an automatic assessment of safe, not safe. That's at the most fundamental level. But we also pick up a lot of characteristics about them, and you can bring that sense, that neuroception, that unconscious sense up to a more conscious level for the sake of this. You know, just have a feeling of how vital are they? Do they have some amount of, we call it energy or fortitude? Do they have presence? You know, when they walk in the room, do you feel them? And also facial expressions. You know, the human face is probably the richest source of communication information that we have visually. And the tone of their voice, the kind of the rhythm, the cadence in their speech, how they move, how they sit down in the chair, right away you can pick up pretty good general feeling, knowing that you don't have to make the brain mysterious. The brain is the body is the brain. Right now, when I'm speaking and I'm doing this with my hands, this is my brain. This is what it looks like for my brain to express itself somatically. If we had a functional MRI or some other kind of tool to actually watch and see, kind of measure or just observe brain functions, you'd see my brain lighting up in very colorful and predictable ways, because I can't do anything with my body without my brain. Actually, to separate the two is kind of silly. So you have an assessment capacity just by your sense and feeling of this person. Another kind of shortcut is, as a person ages, most typically their vitality will be decreasing. Some people rapidly, some people maybe not so rapid. But, kind of classically, anybody over 60, as just a general principle, would benefit from brain exercises just like they would benefit from generalized exercise. It doesn't have to be highly specific. As a matter of fact, some of the general stuff just works really great. So what we have here is we have 4 different types of actual exercises: coordination, flexibility, endurance, and strength, as well as a collection of 7 of the brain networks. And using these 2 things, the direct exercises, coordination, flexibility, endurance, and strength, combined with particular kind of primary brain networks, gives us a really great way to help bring up the capacity of the brain to process signals, so that the brain is able to respond and adapt at a much better level of efficiency. It's really very much like exercise for your body. The coordination, if you wonder, like, Garnet, how can you do this with light and sound signals? Well, it's like this. I won't go into the technical detail, but the coordination, and it's probably the most important one anyway, because there's so many complex signals going on in the brain all the time. Being able to coordinate them, being able to have them make sense to each other is fundamental. So really, foundation coordination is probably the biggie of the brain exercises. I've said at times, if I was forced, which I wasn't, but if I was forced to choose only one signaling design for brain exercise, what would it be? And I'd say foundation level, meaning basic level coordination, because everything is built from that point. So what is coordination? Basically, it's the ability to move from one signal to the next in a kind of agile way. In the same way that if you're doing dance steps back and forth, how easy is it to make a simple linear progression? You start off, in this case, let's imagine with numbers 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2, 2, 3, 4, 4, 3, 2. Let's say that's the basic level. Then, for intermediate, it might not be 2, 3, 4, it might be 2, 4, 6, 6, 4, 2. 2, 4, 6, 6, 4, 2. So you can see that the spread is getting greater, and then it may go from there to 2, 6, 12, 12, 6, 2. So can you expand the progression, the kind of the leap, the distance between signals, frequencies and signals, and still stay graceful? Or does it get clumsy? Do you stumble? Does the brain have a hard time? So that's the coordination. And then the flexibility is not the degree of change, because that's coordination. It's the degree of complexity. So maybe it's 2 steps forward and 2 steps back, 2 steps left, 2 steps right. And then how about 2 steps left, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back? The signal gets increasingly more complex, so it's a kind of a flexibility capacity in the brain. Then you've got the endurance, which is not the degree of change, it's not the degree of complexity, it's the rate of change. So maybe you can do a dance step slowly, but can you do it a little bit quicker, and can you do it quickly? So that's the foundation, intermediate, and advanced when it comes to endurance. It's, are you able to keep up a faster rate over periods of time, or do you fatigue? Does your brain have a hard time processing the signals if the signals are increasing in speed? And lastly is the strength. That's the degree of intensity. So let's imagine volume, low volume, middle volume, high volume, or the light intensity, not very bright, more bright, very bright. So these are really gorgeous, and I'll admit that they're not very exciting or not very sexy. If you think that there has to be a lot of toppings on your pizza, if it really has to be something that has a big wow factor, you're mistaken. As a matter of fact, simple things done well work well. Simple things done well work well. And first things first. I mean, these are profound concepts if you really explore them. So before you bring a person into higher levels of demand, attempts at learning and changing and exploring, brain shaping, you have to consider, are they really in a position? Do they have the capacity for this? I always use the same, for some reason, example of tennis. If they want to learn to play tennis, but do they have the capacity to meet those demands? Are they coordinated enough? Eye-hand coordination and so on, or are they clumsy? Do they stumble? Do they have the degree of flexibility, or are they stiff as a board? Do they have the aerobic capacity to actually play tennis for a period of time, or do they poop out after 10 minutes? They can't run. Do they have the strength and they try to hit an overhead or a backhand? Do they end up tearing their or straining their rotator cuff? So in order to get into complexity and higher levels of demand, you have to have the capacity for that. Now, there are people, regardless of age, that have suffered some kind of insult or disease or some kind of big challenge, and it sucks vitality out of them. In Oriental terms, they go right from their chi into their jing reserves. We would say they're pulling up their constitutional energy, and you can see that when people go through a disease process or a big accident, a trauma of some sort, psychological or physical or both, how it drains, it sucks. So what you've got to do is help them come back up to an adequate level of capacity in their brain to match the more demanding levels of brain signaling. It's really, just think of it in your body as a whole. I oftentimes say, I'm repeating myself, but if you can't lift 50 pounds, why in the world, as an exercise trainer, do I say, here's 100 pounds, you should lift that, let's start there, but you can't if the demand is so much greater than capacity. So I really encourage you, as a Neurolite user, to look more deeply at this concept of brain exercise. Brain exercise to bring up capacity, call it brain vitality if you want, or brain fitness, think about it as the body. And then not only is it bringing it up, but also when it reaches what we'll call an adequate level for the demands, you want to maintain that. If you stretch your hamstrings out, if they're so short, you've got low back problems, and you go ahead and stretch your hamstrings out, using stretching conventional or, hatha yoga or something, and you finally get there over the course of maybe a few weeks to maybe a couple of months, unless the activity is engaging to that degree, hey, if you don't use it, you lose it. It's going to shorten up again unless you maintain it. So with brain exercise, we have these two elements where you're helping bring a person up to an adequate capacity for the demands that they need or expect or want to experience, and also working, if they don't have a particular help right now, they're not really working on a brain shaping long-term process, and you want to keep helping them, or they want to keep helping themselves, well, you can do that with the brain using the brain tonics. So have a look, page 7, there's a written introduction there. It kind of repeats what I'm saying. By the way, one last thing I should say, in this simple assessment quality, number one, if you don't know, and you can begin to learn about the assessment techniques. You'll see them in the videos. They're labeled very clearly. This is a beginner's guide to get you going. One is just use that sense of how vital or fit do they seem. Number two is you can always go foundation. Always. If you're going to error err on the conservative side. If you're going to guess on the conservative side. Look for what I call, what other people call the tipping point. You want to achieve the most while doing the least. Don't push the person to their maximum limit. Find the minimum limit where then the brain takes over, because this is the whole business here. You want the brain, the body, to be responsible for itself, and you be a good helper. But you don't take the responsibility away by trying to do it to the brain. Do something with the brain and then let the brain take care of itself. So the last point is, and I think this is really helpful, to engage neuroplastic change. I believe you know by now, and if you don't, I'll say it. You have to have the clarity of attention of the input. That means you've got to be aware. You can't check out. You can't go to sleep. I mean, what do you get from a book if you're holding the book and you fall asleep? Well, unless you're at some kind of mystical level of transferring information, meaning that you, like most people, you have to read the book, you don't get it because you're not there. With neuroplastic change, you have to have attention, some degree of clarity and presence, attention to the signals. So if a person, or even you, it's a way of testing, if in a session you tend to check out, you start to get drowsy, you start to, what did you say? Then that's a good indication that that level may be too much for you. The demand is greater than your capacity. Now, let's be clear here. I've made this point before. If you just happen to be tired because you're not sleeping enough, or you're overworked, or overstressed, I mean, just lay down almost anywhere. It doesn't have to be with a Neurolite. You'll probably fall asleep. Take a nap, try to read a book, or listen to some nice music, or even watch a movie or something, and the next thing you know is like, whoa, I fell asleep. So let's not mistake ordinary fatigue with checking out, where you get this drowsy, sliding, bye-bye feeling, which is the brain's inhibitors kicking in to hold you at a certain limit of stimulation, because really more than that is uncomfortable for the brain. So as a simple guide, does the person check out? I won't say fall asleep, because it seems like falling asleep, and it may evolve into falling asleep, but it's not really falling asleep in the beginning unless you're just straight on tired. So can you stay there? Can you be there for it? And if the person can't, then okay, take them up to the 5 minutes, and that's fine. One trick is that you can always decrease the demand of any session, any composition, by decreasing the light intensity on your control interface, your user interface screen. That's for the light. And you can also take down the volume a tad on the headphones. So what that does is it coaxes down some of the signal demands so that the capacity is better met. Okay, so I could go on a lot, because this is a huge topic. It's one of the most important topics in neuroplasticity, whether you're working with movement, whether you're working mentally, or whether you're working in the sensory venue like we are with the Neurolite. So you will have really satisfying experiences working to bring up and maintain neuroplastic capacity, brain fitness, if you follow these methods. Please create in whomever is going to receive them an understanding and an expectation. Yeah, they might want to go play tennis, but we've got to spend time in the gym. We've got to work on these fundamentals, and you'll see you're going to be better, you're going to feel better, you have a better mood, your attention seems better, everything is better. And it's like that with general exercise, especially combining the exercises, coordination, flexibility, endurance, and strength, with some of the brain networks, because these are the boss patterns that need reinforcement or fortification. Okay, I'm going to stop. This is page 7. It's the brain exercise methods, the introduction. Super important. Do look at other videos in the channel. It develops them all individually and from many different points of view. Thanks.